Hello and welcome back, and in this video what I would like to do is, before we start creating views, is to go back and test the referential integrity constraint that we created between our sale 02 table here and our customer 04 table that we created here using a foreign key constraint. So let's test that referential integrity constraint by trying to insert some data into our sale 02 table to see what the result is. We've done some insert statements already. Just for clarity purposes, I'm going to scroll down, create a little bit of room here between my previous script and this current one. Now with this one, you can see that, as I said, we're going to test the referential integrity. The comments that you use in your scripts are going to help you in the long run, so please make sure that you're creating comments using the proper format. And as you can tell, I'm using SQL Server 2014 here for what I'm using. But my simple insert statement is insert into the sale 02 table with enter values into these columns, the date of sale, customer ID, and sale amount, with the values that I want inserted into the next row in that table of this date, which does meet our data description that we created earlier using the proper data type. I want this value of 50, and you see I don't have to have the single quotes because it is a numeric value, and the dollar amount for my sales amount column to be $890.15. Alright, it looks okay. If we go to execute this though, you will see that we get an error saying that this statement that we created conflicted with the foreign key constraint we created here on our sales 02. If we expand that, we will see that we have a foreign key, and we named this so we could easily see what it was for. That this is our sales 02 table foreign key constraint as it matched up with the customer ID column in our customer 04 table. Well, the reason that this fails, it says it conflicts, and if you read it all the way through, that the customer or the foreign key constraint conflicted. The reason we do this is that we can check this is that you see we have a value here of customer ID 50. Well, if the customer ID 50 does not exist in our parent table, the customer 04, then it can't be a foreign key in sales 02 because it was never a valid entry in our customer 04 table. So let's just check this. We'll just select top 1000 rows, keep it simple, and you can see that the customer ID, the highest value we have for customer ID here, is 49. We do not have one of 50, therefore we cannot insert this in to reference a value that doesn't exist in the parent table. It's that simple. But what that does tell us is that our referential integrity constraint is working between our tables because of the violation that occurred. Alright, with that out of the way, we are going to go ahead and now go into creating our views for this database. Now, if you recall, a view or an SQL view specifically, it's just a virtual table that's constructed from other tables or views in your database. And that's all it is. It's just a virtual table. Now, there's no data that exists that it's its own and doesn't belong anywhere else, because that view is just a reflection of the actual table, where either the table that you're trying to create a view against or the view that you're creating a view against exists. So it only exists in those actual physical tables. And then to construct or create those views, we simply use SQL select statements using the SQL create view statement, and then some view names, and then are used just as table names would be used in the from clause of other SQL select statements that you've created. So let's go ahead and practice that now. We'll use the SQL create view statement, give it a view name, and in our view name we will use the same convention that we use in creating our table names, and then we will use those in the from clause to select information from that to view the information. So we'll create view, we'll create that script, and then we will select the information from that view that we created so we can see the results. So if we go back into our Server Management Studio, we will create a view against our database here. So I'll create some room here, get rid of the excess there, and we will first of all start out with our simple create view statement and give it our view a name. So the view we are actually going to create here is this line here. We're going to write an SQL statement to create a view named Customer01 Data View, and this is going to be against our Customer01 table. So we're going to be getting data from the Customer01 table and creating a view, and there won't be any data in this actual view to be able to manipulate. To make any changes, we would have to go back here and make changes against this actual table. So in the view, include the values from the table, those columns we created, email address, last name, and we want our last name to be displayed as customer last name. So that's like changing the caption back in Access. We change the captions what the person actually sees when the results are displayed. They will actually see customer last name. And we also want to see first name, but we want this to be displayed as customer first name. Once we create this script, we are going to run the statement to create the view and then test the view by writing and running an SQL select command to see the information that is in the Customer01 data view. So we'll go back in here into Server Management Studio. Now we will finally create that view, and what we're going to do is, as instructed, create view is the SQL statement we're going to use. Customer01 data view is the name that we need to call this view. Then we are going to, as a select statement, we're going to select the email address, the last name, and the first name, and we want our last name to be displayed as customer last name, and the first name, when we run against this, we want this to be displayed as customer first name. And we want this information from Customer01 table, Customer01. So we're going to run that. That is going to create our view. We execute this. You can see it completed successfully. And if we review or refresh our views over here, we'll expand this. And you can see that our view was created. Customer01 data view, Customer01 data view. So if you got that result, great job. If you went and clicked on views and you didn't see that, go ahead and make sure to refresh that so that you can see the current information. Now we want to know what information is there. Before we run the select statement, let's run one against our table. So I'm going to do a select statement here. Select all from, and we want to look at our Customer01 table. And I will execute this statement here. You can see we have the email address. Last name is just like it is in our column. So we have not made any changes there. We are only seeing the information in our Customer01 table. We have email address, last name, first name. Okay, well what do we see when we create our view? We would select all from, instead of the table name, we are going to reference the view name. Now if I stop this here, we should see the same information. So it's just like the select statement we used for our Customer01 table. Execute. Well, that looks awful similar, except you will see that instead of last name, it's customer last name as we designated in our create view statement. Now I can also order or make changes, not actually physical changes, but how I want my information to be displayed by doing a simple order by. So I want to order by, in ascending order, email address. So you can see our last names right now are Chris Bancroft, Catherine Goodyear, Robert Shine, If we run this, we will see if that order changes. It does not, but we could change it. We could order by, let's say customer last name. Well, let's change that. And I could do that descending. However you want to do it, you can use some other commands as you would in a normal select statement against your views. It's simply just a representation or a virtual table of the actual host table or parent table, customer 01. So creating views is really not that hard, but what it does is it allows us to have something that people can see. We can make changes. If we had a customer that they don't really care about the names we use, these logical names, they want something that says, okay, I want to know the email addresses and the customer name and customer first name. I want to be able to make sure that when I see that it says customer first name or customer last name. We can create that view. We could change this to email address to be contact information or contact address. We could do whatever we wanted. It's not going to change our actual table. Now that we've created one, well, let's create another. So let's go ahead and take a look at another example here. Let's see. Write an SQL statement to create view named customer 04 data view based on the customer 04 table. In the view, include the values of customer ID, last name as customer name, first name as customer first name, that sounds familiar, and email address in that order. That's how we want it to display. Run the statement to create the view and test the view just like we did the other one. Okay, if we jump back over here, clear this area a little bit. And we're going to once again use the create view command here. We want the name of that view to be customer 04 data view. And we want the information for this view to be from the select. So make sure you put the as. Create the view as a select statement. Select this data from here. So select the customer ID, last name, and we want that displayed as customer last name, first name, display that as customer first name, then the email address from this table. Now if you look at your customer 04 table here, expand that, we'll expand our columns, and you can see the order those are in are email address, customer ID, email address, last name, first name. So we're just going to move our email address here in our virtual table. So we're just going to change the way it's viewed a little bit, and we're going to, instead of having last name and first name, have customer last name and customer first name. So very simple. We'll just select our statement, execute it, and we will check our views. Collapse these a little bit here so we have more area. So I'm going to refresh the views, and now you can see the customer 04 data view has been created. I can do a simple select statement for my customer 04 data view here. So select all from there. Make sure to put my semicolon. Select that, execute it, and there are the results from that table. Now if you look at your customer 04, now if I execute this, those results should be similar, but you will see that the email address will not be at the end, and you will see that the customer last name and customer first name are back to the original first name and last name. Email address is before last name, and we see last name, first name. So we have not changed anything with our actual table. We just created a virtual table where no data really exists. It's just referencing our main table of customer 04. That's it for creating another simple view. Now, not all views are simple. Sometimes you might need to join information from multiple tables. Let's go ahead and take a look at doing one of those as we end here on our creating views. Let's see this last one here. Yeah, write an SQL statement to create a view named customer sales view based on the customer 04 and sale 02 tables from our database. In this view, we're going to include the values customer ID, last name, and we want that to be displayed once again as customer last name, and the same thing with the first name, display that as customer first name. The email address, now this all comes from the customer 04 table, and then from the sale 02 table, the sale ID, the date of sale, and the sale amount, and we want them to be displayed in that order. Then we want to run a script to see that information. Let's go back into our Server Management Studio. And here we are, the create view. We want it called customer sales view. As select my information. And you can see that I'm using the dot notation here, C representing my customer table, and you can see that I'm also referencing my sales table. Any columns from that I would be using S, and you see that in here when we are comparing the two fields or columns that are the same in each table, that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say C is representing my customer ID of the customer 04 table, and the S dot is representing my sales 02 table using the column customer ID. So we've said create view, call that view this, select this information, the customer ID from the customer 04 table, the last name, first name, but I want them displayed as customer last name and customer first name. Also select the email address, the sale ID, the date of sale, and the sale amount from join my two tables, customer 04, and we're going to reference that as C. Join that with the sale 02 table. We're going to reference that with the capital S. On my similar column, customer ID between these two tables, customer 04 and sale 02. So if we select that, execute the statement, completed successfully just as we hoped, we are going to refresh our view to make sure it's there, and you can see that customer sale view is there. You can expand that if you like, and you can see that there are columns in there, and you can see how those are displayed. And you can see that if we look here, customer last name, you can see that it's showing that as a virtual table we are seeing the data types and if the fields can be null or not. And if we expanded up here, let's say our customer 04 table, we are seeing those columns, only we see last name and first name, but we can compare those and see that they are set up exactly the same with the data types and the not null, because this virtual table doesn't make any changes. It's set up exactly, the data structure is exactly the same as the parent table, host table, however you want to call it. When we talk virtualization, we usually say host and virtual. But nothing has changed here. We inherit the data types, but there's no actual data here because all the data is actually up in this physical table. Alright, so if we want to look at that information, we are going to select all the information from the customer sales view that we just created, and we're going to order it by the customer ID field. So we're going to execute that, and here is the information. You can see that customer ID has been sorted ascending. We have all of the information that we expected to see that exists here in customer 4 if we did a union between customer 4 and sales 2. So we did our join of the two tables based on a common column, and we selected information from it, created a view. This just makes it easier for someone to be able to see this information, and we can save this script. As always, make sure you save your scripts so that you don't have to worry about creating things from scratch. Let's say you want to say, oh, I'm going to need to create a view. I really want to join some information from two tables. You know what? I've created one of those. And you just go back and reference this, and you can see how that one works. If you haven't done a view in a while, or if you haven't done a join statement in a while, and you can reference this so you're not starting from scratch. Thanks for following along, and I will see you in another tutorial video where we go over other database concepts.